This is episode 35 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my two guests for the first time, Daniel Foch and Nick Hill. They are the co-hosts of the #1 real estate investing show in Canada, the Canadian Real Estate Investor Podcast. Guys, welcome to the show. Nice to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's an honor to be your first, pair of guests as well.
Yeah, I'm liking it. And I mean, your real estate investing podcast host. So I don't know if this thing's ever going to end. We may just be on here for 5-6 hours.
Yeah,
we'll see what we can do.
Couple real estate guys who love the sound of their own voice. I imagine we could ramble on forever if we had the chance.
But going to you, Nick, I think the for listeners of both our podcasts, the most important thing is to anybody can be a real estate investor. It's really what are you going to do with it when you get there? Are you going to be able to get past the analysis paralysis that, many of us have been in? What was the thing for you, Nick, that got you past the analysis paralysis? And then I'll get your take too, Daniel, because that's where so many of new investors and even investors who get their first one, they just get stuck and then they don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a really great question. I think it just came from determination. I mean, I didn't have a leg up per se, but what I did have is a lot of experience in starting and managing and failing in my own businesses. So I maintained corporate jobs, and I had a corporate job in commercial real estate and commercial real estate development and played in that space for quite a while, always staying close to real estate. But on the side, I'd have all these side hustles, side projects that would actually turn into semi-scalable and usually profitable businesses. So I think, real estate investing is just a business like anything else. And if you're treating it like a business, as you should, you will be successful. And I just started to look at it as a business, right? For years when I was going through the analysis paralysis, I was doing a whole bunch of due diligence. I knew what I was talking about. I had all that stuff, but I didn't take that one more step to actually doing it. And as soon as you do it, you realize that you knew nothing, and all the due diligence you did goes out the window, and then you start learning the hard way by actually doing it. So I think it was just the determination to get the first deal done, and that's always the hardest, and then the second one's the hardest, and the third one's the hardest, and then it kind of gets easier after that. So yeah, just treating it like a business, taking it seriously, writing a business plan, and then truly surrounding myself with people that were doing it was a major factor for me to actually get going.
Yeah, I think the part that you mentioned at the end,
Dan,
there,
did you?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Nick, you were mentioning surrounding yourself with the right people. I mean, for Jonathan and I, Jonathan, you mentioned, having a dad who is an investor. I mean, when I look at Nick's trajectory, it's very much one of those who, not how things. Like Dan Sullivan's book, right? It's finding the people to make these things happen. And for me, my first investment, my dad helped me a lot with that. But pretty much pushed me to do it. Pretty much said, we're doing this and you're going to benefit from it. So just get in, we're boarding the rocket ship. Right. And I wouldn't have done it at that point because I would have just overanalyzed it, probably with most things in life. If I wasn't forced into a situation, I would have just analyzed it and never done it. And then subsequently, I found actually a guy who cold called me, who's now my business partner, but and Nick and I work with him a lot. I mean, he's in the mortgage space and would buy a deal basically and figure out how to fundraise for it during the closing period. And I learned that just the skills of putting yourself under that immense pressure. Not that I would recommend it because it's not for everyone. Some people can execute a little bit better, but he would say, go find me a perfect deal. And I would go find it. And then he would just do it. And I was watching this and I'm okay, if he trusts my ability to find the deal well enough, and I trust his ability to execute the deal well enough, we have a perfect system. That's my new who in these situations. Cause my dad and I, there just wasn't a scalable situation that we could have invested together indefinitely, but finding a new who. So for a lot of people, it's really putting together a team of people that, if you go find a real estate professional in a local market, or a wholesaler or a realtor who's sourcing amazing deals, and you can trust everything that they bring to you. Now all of a sudden you've brought yourself way closer. You don't need to do the analysis because they're not bringing you crappy deals. And then so a lot of it from my perspective is putting together the team of people who can make you a good investor. And then once you've done that, the rest is just, you're already an investor. You just literally have to close on your first transaction.
In terms of the markets, have either of you ever invested in the States or strictly in Canada for both of you?
Yeah, so I've invested indirectly, like as a
strictly
as an LP or through like corps, but or like private equity. But I've never been a direct investor in the States. I'm currently exploring with actually one of our listeners who lives on the border. So like there's a lot of border cities, obviously, in the GTA, and in Canada. So like Windsor, Ontario is right across the river from Detroit. Detroit's actually north of Windsor, which is hilarious. But anyway, I mean, we've been looking at potentially doing some deals in Detroit because he's pushing for an extra property in his portfolio and he just can't afford another one up here in Canada. And it's like, okay, well, let's go back to the drawing board and start pursuing it. And so I was like, I'll probably come in with you as a partner. So we're kind of right in the, and this is going to be a huge theme for Canadian real estate investors right now. And I know in the States, like there's a ton of Canadians that live in like Florida, California during the summer, like lots of snowbirds, that are interested in learning more about this. Like it's especially with the boomers making that switch into, and a lot of people like getting fed up with certain, changes in, different countries, different areas. I know you're seeing like huge migrations across the States as well. Everybody's opinions are changing on the way things are being done. So we've attracted definitely an audience who has an interest in Canada and investing in the US. And it's something that we've been asked a number of times to discuss thoroughly. So I was like, I don't want to talk too much about it without experience. So we're literally going down the road right now.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. What about you, Nick?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll be working with Dan and that listener and future partner among several other people that were in early stages of making the trek south of the border here. Everything I own and everything that I'm involved in owning is in Ontario right now, which is the biggest and the most expensive market in Canada. 1 in 4 Canadians live in the Golden Horseshoe, which is where Dan and I are both coming to you live from. I mean, look, there's a huge willingness on my part to learn. I mean, I started my investing career listening to Bigger Pockets and trying to, taking away the fundamentals that they spoke about, but, not understanding and not having things at our disposal, like a 1031 exchange, for instance, and some of the very interesting mortgage and financial products that the States has to offer. So, I mean, is it, it's not a no, it's just a not yet. And I think, as we see more and more Canadians with a growing interest to look at places again, Florida, North Carolina, Michigan, parts of New York, California, Seattle, they've all come up a number of times. And as we start to realize how small the Canadian market is overall, right? I mean, Canada by population and GDP is smaller than California. There's only so much we can do here, right? There's only about 33 what we would consider semi-major markets. I don't know if a lot of them would be considered major markets if they were cities in the States, but we're going to run out of stuff to do up here sooner or later. So, our sights are definitely set south of the border.
Yeah, I mean, you echoed something that I say all the time, and I don't believe that real estate investing in almost any way is passive. I mean, syndications as an LP is basically the most passive you can get. Anything else that you own yourself is not passive, even in the slightest. Flipping is the least passive thing I've ever done. Landlording is not passive at all. And if you want to have passive income as a landlord, you think that you're paying for the passivity by getting property management, but the property managers still have to check with you on a lot of the major things. So if you're being bothered all the time, that's not passive, so it's like the fallacy that real estate is passive. But like you said, at a certain level, when you've accomplished so much and you have the doors and you own the doors, it can be quasi-passive. But I think when it gets to that point, we all like it so much that we just move up the ranks, like you guys have said earlier. Like you move yourself up to the glass box and have a team that's doing the other stuff. But the real estate itself is never going to be passive. It could burn down, it could blow away, a water leak could happen at any time. And I think that's what people don't understand at all.
Yeah, I mean, from the podcast, it's one of the best things that we've been able to experience. Right, we've got a national audience, so Dan and I love connecting with anybody and everybody that reaches out to us from the podcast. And a lot of them are newbie investors, right? They're trying to figure out how to get their second or third, or they're trying to figure out how to get their first property. And anytime that we hear the word passive, even in that first phone call, that's immediate. I don't want to say a red flag, because I think it's just they're naive, but I immediately shut that down and say, the word passive and real estate should not be in the same sentence for probably another 10 years for you. So it's just something that people need to be aware of, because again, I think that's that dream that's being sold.